The wipers on my '97 Crown Vic moan in protest with every swipe, trying to clear the November rain off the windshield. They're losing. The glass is a thin, irregular lens, distorting the old Grant house into something that looks even less plausible than its original design. All the edges waver, like the universe itself isn't sure this place should exist. 4 stories if you count the attic, with a widow's walk that's been sagging since Kennedy was shot. More windows boarded up than lit. Ivy slashed away in brown scars, but already creeping back. There's a single porch light, one of those yellow bulbs that claims to keep the bugs away but only manages to draw in the really desperate ones. I keep the engine running, heater dialed halfway up to ward off the cold that seeps through my coat. The defroster's an optimist, but I respect the effort. If you sit in a car long enough, it starts to feel like a waiting room for something that never comes, which is a fair metaphor for most of my career. My ex-wife used to call it a character flaw. My old captain called it having a knack for the thresholds, which is how he explained my habit of stalling outside doors before I knocked. The referral came from a cop I used to drink with, one of the good ones. Westbridge isn't big enough for real secrets, so when something unusual happens, the news skips straight to rumor before the coffee's even brewed. I owed him a favor. Something about a busted tail light and a bottle of decent bourbon, though the exact currency of the exchange escapes me. "Just talk to the kid," he'd said. "Grant's little girl. Sweet thing, but she's got a look in her eyes. Mom's at the end of her rope. Social worker's useless. If you can't fix it, at least tell me I'm not crazy." The house sits on the edge of town, where the lots get big but nobody springs for privacy fencing. I watch as the wind drags skeletal leaves across the gravel driveway, sending them spinning like they're late for something. My headlights pin a plastic tricycle tipped over in the dead grass. There's no movement in the windows. I try to imagine what it's like for a kid to grow up here. All that empty space, the constant drip and creak of settling wood, the smell of other people's lives layered in the walls. They say children are resilient. They also say, "Time heals all wounds," which is the kind of lazy platitude you hear at funerals. The truth is, some wounds are just better at hiding. I take a sip from the coffee mug on my dash, still warm, still bitter, still a step up from the station's brew. I watch the house for a full minute, looking for signs of life. Nothing. Either they're waiting for me or the place is already empty. Neither option makes me feel better. I tap out a rhythm on the steering wheel and think about the last time I took a job that started with, "Just talk to her." That one ended with a coroner's van and a stack of paperwork. My gut's been wrong before, but it's rarely this chatty. The rain is coming down harder now, drumming on the roof like someone upstairs is practicing a bad waltz. I pop the glove box, rummage for a pen and the battered notebook I keep for cases that go sideways. On the cover, a faded sticker. "Truth is what you can't wash off." It's an old joke from my academy days, back when I thought the world was a puzzle that just needed the right detective to put it together. I jot a line. 1107 Sycamore Lane, Grant House. Referral, Donnelly. Subject, Olivia Grant, age 9. Symptoms, night terrors, refusal to enter house proper, mother reports screaming walls. I underline that last part twice. A branch scrapes the roof of my car, sudden and sharp, and I tense before reminding myself that paranoia's just part of the uniform. Still, the hairs on my arms stay up, like they know something I don't. I roll my shoulders, scan the rear view for anything out of place, and let my eyes settle on the porch again. The light's still on, the door's still closed. Somewhere behind those walls, a little girl is either waiting for me or hiding from something she can't name. I thumb the lock on my holster, a ritual that's more about comfort than necessity. Westbridge isn't exactly a war zone, but I've learned the hard way that bad things don't respect zip codes. I check my face in the mirror. Creases deeper than I remember, stubble edging into gray, eyes that belong to a man who's read too many case files and not enough novels. I smirk at my own reflection. It's just a house, I tell myself. Just another job. But the way the porch light flickers makes it look like the house is winking at me, and for a moment I wonder if I'm the one being watched. I leave the car running, pop the umbrella, and step into the downpour. The cold bites through my shoes, soaks the cuffs of my trousers in 3 steps flat. The air tastes of ozone and wet earth, and something else. Old cigarette smoke, maybe, or a memory trying to claw its way out. I pause at the gate, listening to the wind rattle the hedges. The house is bigger up close, with a kind of gravity that pulls at your attention whether you want it to or not. The boards over the ground floor windows are new, raw wood splintered at the edges. Somebody didn't want to take chances. I thumb the bell and hear it echo inside, shrill and insistent. A shape moves in the hallway beyond the glass, elongated by stained light. There's a delay, a hesitation that could mean anything from fear to fatigue. I know the feeling. I square my shoulders and wait, wondering what kind of ghost stories a place like this is built to hold. The door opens 6 inches, chain still engaged, and Sarah Grant's face appears in the gap. Her eyes flick from the badge on my jacket to the umbrella dripping on the porch, then to my face. She unlocks the chain and swings the door wide enough for both of us to pretend there's no second thoughts about letting a stranger inside. "You're early," she says, voice rough from lack of sleep or maybe too many cigarettes. "Or maybe I'm late. She cuts off, sees my shoes, and steps back with an embarrassed flush. "Sorry, do you want to, come in? It's dry in here, at least." I step into a hallway lined with dark wood and a runner rug worn thin in the middle. The air is heavy with something chemical, undercut by a sweeter note. Floral, old perfume, maybe, the kind they don't sell anymore. The light fixture overhead sags with dead bugs, and the bulbs tint everything the color of old bone. To my right, a parlor sits behind glass pocket doors. To the left, a dining room laid for more people than the house could possibly hold now. Sarah Grant is all sharp lines and jittery energy, bundled into a cardigan 2 sizes too big and jeans that were probably an afterthought. Her hair is knotted up, with a shock of gray that wasn't there in the last photo I saw. Hands tight in her sleeves, she wrings them as she studies me. I get the sense she's running diagnostics, cataloging everything that might be off about me before she lets herself relax. It's a habit I recognize in survivors. She manages a smile, but it's a patch job over something else. "Thank you for coming, Detective." "Ray Marshall. Just Ray works fine." "The precinct in Westbridge said you called about your daughter." Her eyes flick toward the staircase. That's when I see the kid. Olivia Grant, 9 years old, tucked into the corner where the riser meets the wall. She's sitting on the bottom step with her knees hugged to her chest, dark hair draped forward so you can't see her face, except when she glances up through the curtain. Her hands are small and pale, sleeves gnawed to damp threads. She's watching me with a focus I've only ever seen in bomb techs and hunting dogs. "Do you want some tea?" Sarah offers, like it's a test to see if I'm real. "Or coffee? We have decaf, but I'm good, thanks." I glance at Olivia, then back to Sarah. "She always hang out on the stairs like that?" Sarah exhales, shrugs. "She won't go past the entryway anymore. Not since my mother passed." She drops her voice as if the kid isn't in earshot. "The counselor says it's separation anxiety. I say that's a crock, because she doesn't seem attached to anyone, not even me." I watch Olivia for a beat. She's counting the floorboards with her toes, rhythmically, like it means something. "How's her appetite?" I ask. Sarah shrugs again. "She eats if I make her. That's about it." She doesn't add anything about the husband, the dead grandmother, the social worker, but the omissions hang between us, thick as the Lysol. The sound of the rain on the roof is muted here, muffled by insulation and history. I let my eyes wander up the staircase. The banister is old brass, worn by a century of hands. There are more framed photos on the wall than I can process in a glance. Family, mostly, but the most recent one with all 3 grants is 6 years out of date. At the top of the stairs, the darkness starts early, like the bulbs up there all decided to quit at once. Is she talking at all? I ask. Not to me. Sarah wraps her arms tighter. Sometimes I hear her at night, whispering to the walls. She huffs out a humorless laugh. I guess that's better than talking to herself. I study Sarah. There's a hardness behind her exhaustion, something I've seen before in parents who've already gone through every stage of grief twice and circled back for thirds. She holds my gaze until I nod, then she peels off to the kitchen, giving me space to make first contact with the girl. Olivia doesn't look up when I crouch a few feet away, keeping a healthy buffer of steps between us. I balance on the balls of my feet. Hey, Olivia. I'm Ray. Your mom said it's okay if we talk for a bit. She says nothing, but her toes stop moving. I let the silence drag, see if she'll fill it. The trick with kids is you have to let them win at least one staring contest before they trust you. Eventually, she turns her head just enough so one blue-gray eye can fix on me. She looks past me, not at me. Do you like it here? I ask, eyes on the photo wall. It's a nice house. Lot of history, I bet. She flicks her gaze away, back to her feet. It's not ours, she says. The words are thin, but they cut. Who does it belong to? I try. She blinks. The house. Her fingers pick at a loose thread on her sleeve. It's always hungry. It keeps everything that comes inside. I let that hang, jot it down in my mental notebook. Is that why you stay on the stairs? Safer here? She lifts her head just enough to study me. Sometimes the walls cry, sometimes they scream, but mostly they wait. I almost smile. The line is pure kid logic, but the delivery is clinical. I see the same in war vets and car crash survivors, folks who've run out of room to process pain, so they just inventory it instead. Does your mom hear it too? I ask. She shakes her head. Mom doesn't listen. She makes the noise go away with TV. The hint of a smile, there and gone. But Nana heard. That's why she stayed in the attic. I hear a clatter in the kitchen, Sarah banging a mug on the counter too hard. I stand and offer Olivia a half wave, knowing she won't reciprocate. I'll be around a little while, I say, just to make sure things are okay. She doesn't answer, but she looks after me as I walk down the hall, her eyes 2 pinpricks in the dark. Sarah stands in the kitchen, spine pressed to the counter as if she needs the support. A chipped mug steams in her hands. She watches the rain bead on the window for a moment before she realizes I'm there. She gestures at a stool, apologizes with a half-smile that doesn't make it to her eyes. It's not usually like this, she says, nodding at the empty liquor bottle on the island, then at the clutter of pill bottles lined up behind it. I mean, it wasn't. Before. I take the stool, nod toward the hallway. She's a good kid. Quiet but sharp. That your take? Sarah stares at her mug. She was never quiet. Not until this year. She sets the cup down hard, sloshing tea. Sorry, I'm not good at this. What happened? I keep my voice low, steady. Sometimes people open up if you offer a void to fill. Sarah kneads her temples. My mother had a stroke last winter. We moved in to take care of her. Olivia and Nana were close, I guess, but not in a normal way. Olivia would stay with her for hours. Read her stories, brush her hair, play with those old music boxes Nana collected. Sometimes I'd walk by the door and they'd both be staring at the wall, not saying a word, like they were listening for something. I jot that in my head. And your husband? She snorts. Gone before we got here. He never liked the house or my mother. Divorce went through 2 years ago. I guess that makes me the problem. There's an edge to her voice that dares me to disagree. I don't. Your mother passed here? Sarah nods, mouth tight. February. Olivia was the one who found her. She wipes a tear before it can get traction. She stopped talking for a week after that. Then she started with the rituals. Won't go upstairs. Won't go to school. Spends all night sitting on that damn staircase, muttering. When I ask her why, she just says the walls scream. She meets my eyes, pleading. I know it sounds crazy, but I can't leave her alone and I can't stay here forever. I need her to be okay. The fluorescent light in the kitchen is strobing, subtle but constant, like a Morse code for bad nerves. I watch Sarah's hands shake as she lifts the mug. You think she's making it up? I ask, keeping it neutral. She hesitates. She's not a liar. She's not imaginative like that. She struggles for words, finds the hard ones. She's scared, Detective, and so am I. I let silence do its work. The fridge kicks on, drowning the rain for a second, then stops as abruptly as it started. Did your mother ever talk about the house? Mention anything unusual? Sarah blinks, caught off guard. She always said it was haunted. A bitter laugh. She was old school. Bells, incense, crosses over every door. My father died in the den when I was 12, and after that she stopped sleeping upstairs. Sarah's hand trembles as she fiddles with a rosary twisted around one wrist, so worn the beads are nearly smooth. Anything else? I press. She'd say the house has a personality. Gets meaner in winter, kinder in spring. Sarah's eyes dart to the ceiling as if expecting an answer. Sometimes at night she'd leave sugar cubes on the windowsills. Said it kept the old ones at bay. I write that down, real pen to real notebook this time. The kitchen's heat is stifling now and sweat beads on my neck despite the cold house. Did you ever hear the walls? Her laugh is a bark. I hear Olivia, not the walls. At least I used to. She sets the mug down and leans in, voice a whisper. It's worse now. The last few nights I could have sworn I heard voices from the basement. Not her voice either. I watch her face as she says this. She believes it, or wants to. I close the notebook, slide it away. Can I look around? Maybe talk to Olivia again? Sarah nods, relief warring with shame in her expression. Yeah, please. If you can figure out what's happening, maybe we can sleep again. I stand and the kitchen seems to shrink around us. The hum of the appliances, the faint smell of bleach, the old paint blistering above the sink. Sarah's pain clings to every surface, but there's something else underneath it, something that reminds me of interrogation rooms after a confession when the truth lingers in the air long after the words stop. As I step back into the hallway, I glance at the shadows collecting on the staircase. Olivia's still there, perched like a question I don't know how to answer. The girl hasn't moved from the bottom step, but her posture's different now, less fetal, more ready to bolt. She tracks me as I settle on the rug at the foot of the stairs, setting myself low enough that I'm not looming. Kids notice that stuff. They catalog it. Mind if I sit? I ask. Olivia's head tilts just slightly like a bird's, but she says nothing. I wait her out. Your mom's worried about you, I say. She told me about the walls, that you hear them. I don't say screaming. I let her name it. She pulls her sleeves over her hands and tucks her chin, eyes fixed on the pattern of the carpet. They don't scream all the time, she says. Only when someone's in the basement. Her voice is flat, unafraid of correction. When it's quiet, they just remember. I blink. It's the kind of thing kids say that adults are supposed to ignore. But I'm not here to make her normal. What do the walls remember? I ask. Olivia lifts her head. For the first time I get a good look at her eyes, wide, pale, rimmed with bruised shadows that don't belong on a kid. Everything, she says, and it lands with the weight of a diagnosis. They remember what happened, who lived here, who didn't leave. Her voice barely ripples the air. The chill in the house is real now. Not just a byproduct of bad heating. I rub my arms, trying not to telegraph my nerves. Is that what happened to your Nana? I ask. She shakes her head, a tiny motion. Nana left, but the house won't let her go until it gets what it wants. The sentence is careful, like she's translating from a language I don't speak. I want to ask more, but something shifts overhead. A creak, or maybe a footstep, and she flinches, not at the noise, but at the idea of me noticing. I soften my voice, gentle as I can manage. "Did your mom ever hear it? The house? She doesn't listen?" Olivia says. "She's too sad. The house gets louder when you're sad." I nod, jotting this into my mental file. The logic is circular, but it holds for her. And maybe it holds for me, too. I'm about to try a new line of questioning when a sound interrupts us. A thud from the basement, sharp and metallic, as if something heavy fell and rolled to a stop. Olivia's eyes widen, but she doesn't scream. Instead, she hugs her knees tighter and rocks, slow and deliberate, as if this is the part she's practiced. Sarah's voice comes from the kitchen, taut and brittle. "What was that?" She's already moving toward us, her fear palpable, 2 steps ahead of her logic. "Probably just the furnace kicking on," I say, but I don't believe it, and neither does she. Sarah kneels by Olivia, wraps her arms around the kid. For a moment they're both motionless, 2 parts of the same frightened animal. "I'll check it out," I say, and my own voice sounds thin in the hush that follows. I stand, brush the dust off my knees, and look back at Olivia. She meets my gaze with something ancient in her eyes, a tiredness I've seen in hospice wards and crime scenes. "Be careful," she whispers. "It's not a warning, it's a certainty." I nod, the words caught in my throat, and head for the basement door. The basement stairs are narrow and uneven, the kind that invite a lawsuit. I duck under a hanging bulb and catch a whiff of mildew, sweetened with the copper tang of old plumbing. The whole house shifts overhead as I descend, the storm feeding a low vibration through the foundation. Halfway down, I hear it, a muffled voice, male, not the thud from before, but a shout. "Jesus Christ! Somebody get the cops!" There are 2 uniforms already in the basement, standing by the fuse box, their radios hissing with overlapping dispatch chatter. I raise my hands in a mock surrender. "Relax, gentlemen. Just the detective." The workman, coveralls, mud boots, hair a disaster, waves me over to the far wall. His flashlight beam shakes as he points. "Wasn't here yesterday?" he says, like I might argue. He looks more shaken than Sarah or Olivia. I follow his light. There, at the base of the wall behind the water heater, a neat square of bricks stands out, mortar fresh and sloppy compared to the rest of the 100-year-old basement. The bricks have been broken through from the inside, jagged edges, dust spilling onto the floor. Something in the pit of my stomach goes cold. "What is it?" one of the uniforms asks, but he's already edging backward. "Keep the area clear," I say, voice a notch lower than usual. I edge closer, careful not to disturb the loose debris. The space behind the bricks is no wider than a closet. Even in the weak light, I can see the outline. 3 forms hunched and collapsed onto each other, shrouded in what was once Sunday-best clothing. Now the fabric is colorless and brittle, fused to bones and leathery patches of what used to be skin. All of them are small? Smaller than me, anyway. The workman gags, turns away. The cop nearest to me swallows hard and scribbles into his notepad. I pull my phone, snap a picture, then focus on the details. The clutch of hands, the faded beads of a child's necklace, a pair of horn-rimmed glasses perched on a shattered jaw. A wallet on the floor by the first skeleton is still legible. I reach for it with a gloved hand. Inside, 3 library cards, all stamped with the year 1967. Names I'll have to cross-check, but even without IDs, I know what we're looking at. These aren't recent deaths. These are ghosts the house never managed to digest. The basement is suddenly crowded. The uniforms call for backup. Upstairs, feet pound back and forth, and voices blur together in an echo chamber of, "Oh my God," and "Stay back, ma'am." I close my eyes for a moment, trying to place the chill. It isn't just the corpses. It's the way the air feels denser, like the basement itself is trying to draw me in, close the wall behind me. I step away, peel off the gloves, and wave the officers down. "Secure the scene," I tell them. "Nobody touches anything until forensics arrives. I want the hallway clear, too." Back up the stairs, Sarah is clutching Olivia to her chest, both of them watching the doorway with identical stricken faces. I catch Sarah's gaze, shake my head, then glance at the kid. She doesn't blink. "It's okay," I say, for lack of anything better. "You're safe." But I know that's a lie, and so does Olivia. Behind me, the house seems to exhale, the hum of the furnace a guttural sigh. The uniforms crowd the kitchen, herding Sarah and Olivia to the table with the gentle brutality of men who'd rather be anywhere else. They speak in lowered voices, half apology, half procedure. The sergeant, a red-faced lifer who has seen too many domestic calls and not enough therapy, takes me aside. "Old bodies," he says, as if that settles anything. Probably a cult thing. Or maybe a murder-suicide, back in the hippie days. "We'll get the ME out here, bag 'em up, write it off. Nothing for you to stress about." I watch his face as he says this. He means it. The past is always easier to bury when it comes pre-mummified. Sarah sits hunched over the table, her hands white-knuckled on a mug that's gone cold. The social worker has arrived, all perfume and note-taking, and is circling the situation like a shark that smells antidepressants. I watch her eyes dart from Sarah to Olivia to the wall behind them. No one wants to say the words out loud. What if the house really is haunted? Olivia stands a little apart, clutching something in her fist. She's staring at the floor, but every so often she glances at the kitchen door, as if expecting someone, or something, to come through. I kneel beside her, trying to get her to look at me. "What's in your hand?" I ask, gentle as I can. She doesn't answer, but she opens her palm. It's a locket, brass turned dark with age, chain broken and kinked. Inside, a photo. 3 children, their faces hollow-eyed and sunburned by time. She presses it into my hand, then wipes her own on the hem of her dress. "Don't touch it too long," she says. "It's screaming." I nod like I understand, because maybe I do. I hold the locket by the chain and feel an itch crawl up my arm, a memory of cold concrete and the scent of bleach from another case, another decade. I look at Olivia, her eyes fixed on mine, and something passes between us, recognition or warning or both. The kitchen vibrates with voices and the slam of doors as forensics arrives. Sarah has started crying, silent but relentless, tears streaming down her cheeks in perfect symmetry. The social worker pats her on the back, promising help that will never be enough. I step into the hallway for air. Donnelly, my cop friend, finds me there. He smells like rain and stale tobacco. He gives me a look that's half gratitude, half pity. "You're done here," he says. "Let the town chew on this one for a while. Go home. Drink something strong." I want to. God, I want to. But I glance back at the kitchen, at Olivia's knuckles white on the locket, and I know there's no walking away. Not for me. "You ever wonder if a house can go bad?" I ask. Donnelly snorts. "Only ever seen the people, Ray. Never the walls." I shrug, pocket the locket. "Maybe you just haven't looked close enough." He laughs, but it's an uneasy sound. He slaps my shoulder, goes back to the living room, leaves me alone with the house's breathing. Outside, the storm has finally let up. The silence is a vacuum, pulling at the edges of my nerves. Upstairs, a floorboard creaks. I stare into the dark at the foot of the stairs, and for the first time all night, I wonder if I'm the one who should be afraid. The rain hasn't stopped in 4 days. It drums against the Grant house like an interrogation, relentless and patient, turning the front yard into a swamp that swallows the reporters' shoes when they venture too close to the crime scene tape. I watch them from the kitchen window, vultures in rain slickers, their cameras wrapped in plastic like evidence bags. They're waiting for something newsworthy to happen, but all they're getting is the slow dissolution of a family that was already hanging by threads. The house feels different now, heavier. The forensics team stripped away the basement's mystery, bagged and tagged the skeletons, measured angles and trajectories until the dead became data points. But they left something behind, a hollowness that echoes in every room, like the house is mourning the loss of its secrets. The uniforms patrol the perimeter in shifts, their radios crackling with boredom, and the occasional sighting of a trespasser with a metal detector. Olivia sits at the kitchen table, small hands wrapped around a mug of cocoa that's gone cold. She hasn't touched it, just stares at the steam curling off the surface like she's reading smoke signals. Sarah hovers nearby, pretending to organize pill bottles that are already in perfect rows. The guilt radiates off her in waves, for the trial, for the house, for every decision that led them here. "Can we try something?" I ask Olivia, keeping my voice gentle. I've been carrying objects from around the house in an evidence bag, testing a theory that's either going to prove I've lost my mind or confirm that the world is stranger than I thought. She nods without looking up. Her trust is complete and terrifying. I pull out the first item, an old walking cane, mahogany with a brass handle worn smooth by decades of use. Sarah's grandmother's, according to the faded medical bracelet still wrapped around the hook. I set it on the table between us, watch Olivia's face change. "You don't have to touch it," I say. "Just tell me what you see." She reaches out anyway, fingers hovering over the brass. The moment she makes contact, her whole body goes rigid. Her eyes roll back, showing nothing but white, and a sound escapes her throat. Not quite a scream, more like the air being forced out of a punctured lung. "Pain," she whispers, voice thin as paper. Falling, but not down the stairs. Inside, falling. Everything going dark, and the floor is so cold, and someone's calling, but they're too far away. I pull the cane back, breaking the connection. Olivia sags forward, breathing hard. Sarah rushes over, wraps her arms around the kid, but Olivia pushes her away with surprising strength. "She was alone," Olivia says, looking at me with those two old eyes. "When it happened, she was calling for someone, but nobody came." The chill that runs down my spine has nothing to do with the house's broken heating. I've worked enough cases to know the difference between a kid's imagination and something else entirely. This feels like testimony. Sarah's face crumples. "Mom had her stroke at night. I found her in the morning." Her voice breaks. "She might have been conscious for hours." I bag the cane, hands steadier than they have any right to be. The second item is a silk scarf, peacock blue with gold thread, still carrying the faint scent of lavender and face powder. Olivia sees it and immediately shakes her head. "I don't want to," she says. "Then don't," I tell her, but she's already reaching out. This time the reaction is different. Tears start flowing before she even makes contact, streaming down her cheeks like she's accessing someone else's grief. When her fingers brush the silk, she doubles over, sobbing with the raw intensity of loss that hasn't had time to scab over. "She's saying goodbye," Olivia chokes out between sobs. She knows she's going, but there's so much she didn't say, so much regret, and she's sorry, so sorry for all the things she should have done different. I take the scarf away, but Olivia keeps crying. Sarah tries to comfort her, but the kid is locked in someone else's emotions, working through grief that isn't hers, but feels real as breathing. The logical part of my brain, the part that got me through 20 years of police work, keeps trying to rationalize this. Suggestion, maybe. Some kind of psychological reaction to trauma. But the rest of me, the part that's learned to trust my gut in dark alleys and interrogation rooms, knows I'm watching something that shouldn't be possible. Olivia finally stops crying, wipes her face with her sleeve. "Nana was scared," she says. "Not of dying, of leaving us alone with the house." My hands feel numb as I write this down, but there's a warmth in my chest, an uncomfortable heat that I recognize as the moment when a case stops being about evidence and starts being about truth. I've crossed a line I didn't know existed, from skeptic to believer, and there's no going back. Sarah won't meet my eyes. She's stacking and restacking the pill bottles, movements sharp and anxious. "The trial was supposed to help," she says suddenly. "The experimental drug. For Olivia's seizures. The doctors said there might be side effects, but nothing like this. What kind of side effects? I asked. Enhanced sensory processing. That's what they called it. Her laugh is bitter, like she needed to be more sensitive to the world. The pieces click together with the sound of handcuffs closing. The drug trial, the psychometric episodes, the company that's probably watching from a distance, taking notes on their successful experiment. My phone buzzes. Text from Donnelly. Forensics final. 3 males, mid-20s, died 1964. Bullet wounds, wallets full of stolen cash. Bank robbery crew from Boston, probably hid out here after a job went south. Not serial victims, just thieves who picked the wrong hideout. I show Sarah the message. She reads it twice, face going pale. So they're not connected to my mother? Doesn't look like it, I say, but I'm thinking about coincidences and how they don't exist in my line of work. 3 dead men in the basement of a house where a little girl hears walls scream. A pharmaceutical company running trials on children. A grandmother who left sugar cubes on windowsills to keep the old ones at bay. Nothing ends where it's supposed to. The rain keeps falling, and somewhere in the walls the house settles with a sound like sighing. The story should end there, with 3 dead thieves and a case closed by 40 years of dust. But Olivia still has the locket clutched in her small fist, and the house still hums with secrets that forensics can't bag and tag. I watch her turn the tarnished brass over in her palm, studying it like it might tell her something the dead men couldn't. I need to see, she says, voice steady, despite the tears still drying on her cheeks. Sarah starts to protest, but I hold up a hand. We've crossed into territory where normal rules don't apply. The kid has shown me things that shouldn't be possible, and I'm starting to think she's our only compass in whatever maze we've stumbled into. Olivia presses the locket between both palms and closes her eyes. The change is immediate and violent. Her body goes rigid, back-arching like she's been struck by lightning. Her mouth opens in a silent scream, and when she finally finds her voice, it's not hers anymore. Please, don't. I didn't see anything, I swear I didn't see. The words pour out in a desperate rush, higher pitched than her normal tone, the accent wrong for a kid from Massachusetts. Tommy, tell them I won't say nothing. Please, Tommy, tell them. Her eyes snap open, but they're not seeing the kitchen. They're fixed on something terrible in 1964, watching a scene that ended with 3 men dead in a basement. When she speaks again, it's in her own voice, but hollow and distant. A gold ring, she whispers. On his right hand. A snake eating its tail. And a voice calling him Tommy. She blinks, shudders, and the locket falls from her hands like it's burned her. He was there. He watched them die. But he didn't die with them. I bagged the locket, mind already working through possibilities. Tommy, 1964, survivor of a robbery crew that ended up buried in the Grant House basement. It's not much, but it's a thread, and I've built cases on less. The town records office smells like bureaucracy and instant coffee. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with skeptical eyes and a nameplate that reads, Mrs. Chen, listens to my request with the patience of someone who's dealt with too many amateur genealogists. Thomas, around 1964, connected to any kind of legal trouble, I say, sliding a 20 across the counter. Police reports, court records, anything. She disappears into the file room and returns with a manila folder thick enough to stop a bullet. Thomas Crane, she says. Quite a story, actually. Started as a petty criminal, but turned his life around. Became a lawyer, then a judge. Real inspiration, if you believe in redemption. I flip through the pages, past arrest records for breaking and entering, assault, armed robbery. The photo from his 1963 booking shows a thin kid with sharp eyes and the kind of smile that suggests he knows something you don't. The charges were dropped 6 months later due to insufficient evidence. The last entry is a newspaper clipping from 1964. Local youth helps police capture dangerous robbery crew. Thomas Crane, 19, provided information that led authorities to the hideout of 3 men wanted for a string of bank robberies across New England. The article calls him a hero. It doesn't mention that the 3 men were found dead. Judge Thomas Crane's office sits on the top floor of the county courthouse, all mahogany and leather, and the kind of respectability that money can't buy, but power can lease. His secretary, a woman who looks like she ironed her smile on fresh every morning, tells me he's in conference. I tell her it's about the Grant House murders, and suddenly his schedule clears. Crane is older now, 78 according to the records, but his eyes are still sharp. He's wearing a navy suit that costs more than my car, and his right hand sports a gold ring, a snake eating its tail, just like Olivia described. He gestures to a chair across from his desk, but I stay standing. "Detective Marshall," he says, voice smooth as aged whiskey. "I heard about the discovery at the Grant property. Terrible business. Though I understand it's an old crime, nothing current to concern the community." I set Olivia's drawing on his desk, a child's sketch of a young man's face, terrified, mouth open in a scream. Below it, in crayon, the word Tommy in shaky letters. Crane's face goes white, but he recovers quickly. "Remarkable artwork for a child," he says, "though I'm not sure why you're showing it to me." "The girl who drew this has a gift," I say. "She touches things and sees their history. She touched something that belonged to those 3 men in the basement." His laugh is carefully measured, the kind judges use to dismiss weak arguments. "Detective, surely you don't believe in such nonsense." The imagination of a traumatized child. "She knew about the ring," I interrupt. "Described it perfectly. And she heard someone calling the name Tommy." For just a moment his mask slips. I see the 19-year-old thief underneath, scared and calculating, deciding who lives and who dies. Then the judge reasserts himself, straightening his tie with practiced dignity. "I'm afraid you've wasted a trip," he says. "I've never seen that drawing before, and I certainly have no connection to any crimes from 1964. I pocket the drawing, head for the door. "Funny thing about the past, Your Honor. Sometimes it doesn't stay buried." That night, Sarah's car leaves the road on Route 9, 3 miles outside of town. The state trooper who responds calls it an accident. Wet pavement, probably fell asleep at the wheel. But when I get to the hospital, Sarah's sitting up in bed with her left hand bandaged and her eyes full of a rage that's burned away all the grief. "Black SUV, she says before I can ask how she's feeling. Came up behind me doing 70, bumped my rear quarter panel twice. When I tried to speed up, they rammed me into the guardrail." I pull out my notebook, but she grabs my wrist with her good hand. "It wasn't an accident," she says, voice low and urgent. "They wanted me off the road, maybe permanently." I look at her bandage, at the bruises starting to purple along her collarbone. "Who would want to hurt you?" Sarah's laugh is sharp enough to cut glass. "Someone who doesn't want my daughter touching any more old things," she says. "Someone who's got bigger secrets than 3 dead thieves." Through the hospital window, I can see the parking lot, the dark shapes of cars that might be watching or might just be shadows. Either way, the feeling crawls up my spine like ice water, and I know we've crossed another line, from mystery to target practice. Somewhere in town, Judge Thomas Crane is probably making phone calls, and tomorrow the rules are going to change. The man in the pressed suit is waiting when I leave Sarah's room. He's got the kind of face that looks assembled in a boardroom, symmetrical, forgettable, designed not to stick in witness testimony. His smile is professional courtesy wrapped around a threat, and his business card reads, "Dr. James Fletcher, Patient Advocacy Specialist, Helix Pharmaceuticals." "Detective Marshall," he says, extending a hand I don't shake. "I understand you've been speaking with one of our trial participants." The hallway is empty, except for a nurse at the far end, too far away to hear. I keep my voice level. "Olivia Grant isn't your patient anymore." His smile doesn't waver. Once enrolled in our program, subjects maintain certain obligations. Confidentiality agreements, primarily. We're quite protective of our research data. Including data that involves seeing dead people? Fletcher's pause is barely a heartbeat, but I catch it. Enhanced sensory processing manifests in various ways, he says, usually temporary, though we're always interested in monitoring unusual outcomes. The word monitoring lands like a diagnosis. I think about the black SUV that ran Sarah off the road, about the way this conversation feels like a job interview where I'm not applying for employment. Your concern is noted, I say, stepping around him. But the kid's not going back in any lab. Of course not, Fletcher agrees, still smiling. We're simply hoping all parties can be discreet about any irregularities they may have observed. I'm halfway to the elevator when his voice follows me down the hall. It would be unfortunate if the situation became more complicated. My phone starts buzzing 20 minutes after I leave the hospital. Unknown numbers, mostly, calls that disconnect when I answer. The texts are more direct. Drop the case. Not your fight. Think about your pension. The last one includes a photo of my apartment building. By evening, the pressure campaign has expanded. My captain calls, voice tight with the kind of stress that comes from above. Ray, I'm getting inquiries about your extracurricular activities. Maybe it's time to focus on the cases we're actually paying you for. Donnelly meets me at Murphy's Tavern, sliding into the booth across from me like he's afraid someone's watching. His beer sits untouched, foam dying into flat amber disappointment. The place is nearly empty, just us, the bartender, and a couple of locals playing pool with the dedication of men who have nowhere else to be. I can't do this anymore, he says without preamble. Whatever you're stirring up, it's got people nervous. Important people. I take a sip of my whiskey, let it burn away the taste of the day. Since when do we care about important people's feelings? Since they start making calls to the chief about my pension. Donnelly's hands shake as he reaches for his beer. Look, Ray, I like you, but I got 2 kids in college and a mortgage that'll outlive me. I can't afford to be a hero. The jukebox kicks on, some country song about lost love and empty highways. It's the kind of music that makes you think about all the ways life can go wrong when you're not paying attention. What aren't you telling me? I ask. Donnelly glances around the bar, leans in close. Word is there's federal interest in the Grant situation. Something about national security implications. Bioweapons research, maybe. The kind of thing that makes local cops very small, very fast. I finish my whiskey, feeling the burn settle into my chest. And you believe that? I believe in keeping my head down and my mouth shut. He stands, throws a 20 on the table. I never called you about the Grant kid. We never met tonight. You figure out how to walk away from this, or they'll figure it out for you. The Grant house looks like a crime scene that forgot to clean up after itself. Yellow tape still flutters from the porch railings, and the media circus has moved on to fresher disasters, leaving behind trampled flower beds and cigarette butts in the driveway. But something's off about the windows, too dark, like the house has closed its eyes. I use the key Sarah gave me, step into the hallway, and immediately know someone's been here. The air smells wrong, sharp, chemical, like industrial cleaning products trying to cover something else. The photographs on the stair wall are crooked, and the runner rug is bunched at one end as if someone was in a hurry. In the kitchen, every drawer has been pulled out and rifled through. Papers scattered across the floor, cabinet doors hanging open like mouths caught mid-scream. They were looking for something specific, and they took their time doing it. The refrigerator has been moved away from the wall, revealing dust patterns and spider webs that haven't seen light in years. Upstairs is worse. Sarah's bedroom looks like it was hit by a tornado with OCD, methodical destruction. Every surface searched, every hiding place violated. The mattress is askew, pillows gutted, dresser drawers dumped in neat piles on the floor. Olivia's room is the same, but more careful, as if they knew a child lived here and didn't want to traumatize her more than necessary. In the grandmother's room, the one Olivia won't enter, I find the real message. Every music box has been opened, their tiny dancers frozen in mid-pirouette. The antique jewelry box sits empty, its velvet compartments pulled out and examined. And on the vanity mirror, written in what looks like lipstick, a single word: enough. I photograph everything, knowing the pictures won't matter. This isn't the kind of crime that gets reported or investigated. It's the kind that sends a message. We know where you live. We know what you care about. We can reach you whenever we want. The basement door is open, and I can hear the furnace cycling on and off with mechanical precision. The smell of mildew has been joined by something else. Ozone, maybe, or the aftermath of electrical equipment. They were down there, too, in the room where 3 men died and secrets were supposed to stay buried. I lock up and drive away, checking my mirrors for taillights that might follow. The house shrinks in my rear view, but the feeling of being watched stays with me all the way home. Somewhere in a corporate office, someone is updating a file with my name on it, deciding whether I'm still useful or just another problem to solve. My apartment feels smaller when I get home, like the walls have moved closer together while I was gone. I pour 3 fingers of bourbon and sit by the window, watching the street for shapes that don't belong. Tomorrow I'll have to tell Sarah that her house isn't safe, that her daughter isn't safe, that maybe none of us are safe anymore. The whiskey burns, but not enough to warm the chill that's settled in my bones. Sarah calls me at 3 a.m, voice tight with the kind of panic that makes rational decisions impossible. "They were in Olivia's room," she says, words tumbling over each other. Her drawings are gone, the ones she made after touching things. They took everything. I'm already reaching for my jeans, phone cradled against my shoulder. "Where are you now?" "Still at the hospital." "But I can't. Ray, I can't take her back to that house." "Not with them watching." Her breath catches. "I'm going to run, take Olivia, and drive until we hit Ocean or Canada, whichever comes first." The smart play would be to talk her out of it. Tell her that running only makes you look guilty, that there are proper channels for this kind of thing. But I've seen those proper channels, and they all lead back to corporate conference rooms where people like Olivia become test subjects and people like Sarah become collateral damage. "Give me 2 hours, I say. Pack light, nothing that can be traced. I'll meet you at the Mobile station on Route 2. But 2 hours isn't enough. The roadblock is set up just past the town limits, where Route 2 narrows to 2 lanes and the forest presses close on both sides. 2 black SUVs positioned like bookends, emergency flashers painting the asphalt in stuttering red. The men wearing Helix windbreakers don't look like pharmaceutical researchers. They look like the kind of people who solve problems with non-disclosure agreements and shallow graves. I pull up behind Sarah's Honda, engine running, and watch through the rain-streaked windshield as one of them approaches her driver's side window. Professional, polite, probably explaining that there's been an incident and they need to ask a few questions. Sarah's hands are white-knuckled on the steering wheel, and in the passenger seat, Olivia sits perfectly still, like a small animal that knows the predator's already spotted it. The man in the windbreaker is reaching for Sarah's door handle when I decide subtlety is overrated. I lean on the horn, long and loud, and gun the Crown Vic forward. The man dives aside as I ram the rear quarter panel of the SUV, spinning it sideways across the road. Metal screams against metal, and my windshield spiderwebs from the impact, but the blockade is broken. Sarah gets the message. Her Honda lurches forward, tires squealing on wet pavement, weaving around the damaged SUV and into the gap I've created. I follow her through, my car's suspension groaning in protest, while behind us men in corporate jackets shout into radios and sprint for the undamaged vehicle. The side road appears like a gift from whatever deity watches over desperate people and bad decisions. Sarah's brake lights flash once, twice. Then she's turning left onto a narrow track that disappears into pine trees thick enough to hide an army. I follow, branches scraping my windows, headlights cutting through darkness that seems to swallow sound. We drive for 20 minutes on roads that probably don't appear on any map, past hunting cabins and abandoned homesteads, until Sarah finally pulls into a clearing beside a rusted-out pickup truck that's been growing moss since the Clinton administration. When she gets out of the Honda, her legs nearly give way. Olivia emerges slowly, clutching a small backpack like it contains everything she owns. The rain has softened to mist, but the air still carries the threat of worse weather. Lightning flickers in the distance, illuminating clouds that look like bruises against the sky. I check my phone. No signal, which is either a blessing or a trap, depending on who's looking for us. "This is insane," Sarah says, but there's relief in her voice. "We can't keep running forever." "We won't have to," I tell her, though I'm not sure I believe it. "Just until I figure out how to make this stop." Olivia hasn't said a word since we left the roadblock. She stands at the edge of the clearing, staring back the way we came, her small frame rigid with concentration. When I approach her, she doesn't turn around. "They'll find us," she says, matter of fact. "They always find the special ones." "What do you mean, special ones?" She finally looks at me, and her eyes are ancient in her child's face. "The other kids from the trial? The ones who got the same medicine as me." Her voice drops to a whisper. "I can feel them sometimes, when I'm sleeping. They're scared, and they can't turn it off." The pieces click together with the weight of inevitability. Multiple test subjects, enhanced sensory processing, a pharmaceutical company with enough pull to shut down police investigations and enough resources to stage roadblocks. We're not dealing with a single case of psychometric ability. We're looking at a systematic program of human experimentation. "How many others?" I ask. "7 that I can feel," Olivia says. "But some of them are getting quieter, like they're going to sleep and not waking up." My blood turns to ice water. "Olivia, if you touch the wrong person, if someone finds out what you can do, they'll know everything," she finishes. "Every secret, every crime, everything they want to keep buried." She hugs her backpack tighter. "That's why they want us back. We're too dangerous to leave alone." Thunder rolls across the forest, closer now, and I can smell ozone in the air. The storm is coming whether we're ready or not. I kneel down so I'm at Olivia's eye level, close enough to see the fear she's trying so hard to hide. "I'm going to protect you," I say, and the words feel like a vow. "Both of you, whatever it takes." She nods, but doesn't smile. "You should be scared too," she says. "They don't just go after the special ones. They go after anyone who helps us." As if summoned by her words, headlights sweep across the tree line, distant but getting closer. I usher Sarah and Olivia toward the abandoned cabin at the back of the clearing, then return to the Crown Vic for the .38 revolver in my glove compartment. The weight of it is familiar, reassuring, a tool for problems that can't be solved with words or badges. The storm breaks as I check the cylinder, rain hammering down in sheets that turn the world gray and formless. Somewhere in that gray, people with corporate funding and federal connections are hunting a 9-year-old girl who can see too much truth. I thumb back the hammer and listen to the thunder roll overhead, knowing that before this is over, someone's going to have to decide who's more dangerous, the living or the dead. Lightning splits the sky, and for just a moment, everything is illuminated in stark black and white, the way the world looks in the moments before everything changes forever. The night fractures like glass under a sledgehammer. Sirens shriek through the forest, their wail cutting across the storm with surgical precision, while tactical spotlights sweep the trees in wide, hungry arcs. The abandoned cabin where we'd taken shelter suddenly feels like a trap with the walls closing in. Through the grimy window, I count at least 6 vehicles converging on our position, their headlights turning the rain into silver needles that slice through the darkness. "Move," I tell Sarah, grabbing Olivia by the shoulders. The kid's eyes are wide, reflecting the strobing emergency lights like a nocturnal animal caught in traffic. We're going back to the house. Sarah stares at me like I've lost my mind. That's exactly where they expect us to go. Which is why it's the only place they won't look first. I'm already pushing them toward the cabin's back door, away from the approaching vehicles. Trust me. The run through the woods is a nightmare of branches and mud, and the constant fear of breaking an ankle on hidden roots. The sleet has started, turning the rain into tiny bullets of ice that sting my face and make every surface treacherous. Olivia stumbles twice, but she doesn't cry out, doesn't complain. She clutches her small backpack against her chest like it contains the last good thing in the world, and maybe it does. Behind us, the tactical teams are coordinating their assault on the empty cabin. I hear the sharp bark of orders, the crackle of radios, the mechanical precision of people who've done this before. They'll realize their mistake soon enough, but by then we need to be ghosts. The Grant house looms out of the storm like a fever dream, its windows dark and accusatory. The crime scene tape has been torn away by the wind, and what's left flutters from the porch railings like prayer flags for the dead. I lead Sarah and Olivia around to the kitchen door, using the key that feels heavier now, weighted with all the secrets it's unlocked. The service tunnel, I explain, voice barely audible over the storm. Spotted it during my first walkthrough. Connects the kitchen pantry to the old root cellar. Comes up in the barn next door. The house feels different in the dark, like it's been holding its breath since we left. Our footsteps echo in the hallway, muffled by the carpet but still too loud for comfort. In the kitchen, I pull aside the shelving unit in the pantry, revealing a narrow opening that's been painted over so many times the wood looks like it's melting. I can't fit through that, Sarah whispers, eyeing the tunnel entrance. You'll fit, I tell her, because the alternative isn't an option. Olivia goes first, then you, then me. The tunnel is a throat of rotting timber and spider webs, barely wide enough for an adult's shoulders. Olivia disappears into it without hesitation, her small form swallowed by darkness that seems to breathe. Sarah follows with considerably more difficulty, her breathing harsh and panicked in the confined space. I squeeze in behind them, pulling the shelving unit back into place as best I can from inside. The crawl feels like it lasts hours, though it's probably only minutes. The air tastes of mold and something sweet that might be decay. My knees scrape against rough boards, and something drips on the back of my neck, condensation or worse. Ahead of me, Sarah's breathing comes in short, frightened gasps, and I can hear Olivia whispering something I can't make out. When we finally emerge in the neighbor's barn, the cold hits like a physical blow. The barn hasn't been used for anything but storage in decades, and it smells of rust and old hay, and the kind of neglect that accumulates like dust. Olivia helps pull Sarah out of the tunnel opening, then me, all of us breathing hard and covered in grime that will take a week to wash off. Through the barn's broken windows, I can see the Grant house in the distance, still dark, still waiting. But now, there are new lights moving around it, flashlight beams cutting through the storm, searching for signs of life. They'll find the tunnel eventually, but not tonight. Tonight we have the darkness and the storm on our side. Olivia sits on a bale of hay, finally opening her backpack. She pulls out the drawing she made of the young man's terrified face. Judge Crane at 19, watching his partners die in a basement that would keep their secret for 40 years. The paper is damp from our escape, but the image is still clear, rendered in the precise detail that only comes from touching the truth. The other children, she says suddenly, looking up at me with those two old eyes. The ones from the trial? I can feel them getting farther away. My blood chills. What do you mean, farther away? They're being moved. Or, she struggles for words that a 9-year-old shouldn't need. They're going quiet, like when you turn down a radio until you can't hear it anymore. I think about corporate conference rooms where children become test subjects, about pharmaceutical companies with enough resources to stage roadblocks and hunt families through forests, about how easy it would be to make inconvenient evidence disappear, especially evidence that can walk and talk and remember things that were supposed to stay buried. Sarah wraps her arms around Olivia, pulling her close. "We're going to figure this out," she says, but her voice cracks on the promise. I check my watch. Nearly 4 in the morning. In a few hours, the sun will rise and the storm will pass, and we'll have to decide where to run next. But for now, we're alive, we're together, and Olivia still has her gift intact. That's something. Maybe it's enough. Outside, the wind howls through the barn's broken boards, carrying the sound of sirens that are getting closer. I thumb the safety on my .38 and listen to the storm, wondering how many other children are out there in the dark, their voices getting quieter, their lights going out one by one. The drawing in Olivia's hands seems to watch us with its terrified eyes, a witness to crimes that span generations. Tomorrow I'll have to decide whether to fight or run, whether to trust the system or burn it down. Tonight, I just hold my position and wait for dawn. The sound that cuts through the storm isn't another siren. It's the soft crunch of expensive tires on gravel, deliberate and unhurried. I peer through the barn's broken slats and see a single car approaching the Grant house, its headlights carving neat circles in the sleet. Not the tactical vehicles with their harsh spotlights and urgent geometry. This is something else entirely, a dark sedan that moves like a hearse, slow and certain. When the driver's door opens, I recognize the silhouette immediately. Judge Thomas Crane steps into the storm without an umbrella, his shoulders hunched against the ice that's turning his expensive suit into a sodden mess. Even from this distance, I can see the way he moves, not with the authority I witnessed in his courthouse office, but with the careful steps of a man walking toward his own execution. "Stay down," I whisper to Sarah and Olivia, but the girl is already pressing her face to the window, her breath fogging the glass. Her small hands are shaking as she pulls the brass locket from her pocket, the one that showed her Crane's face all those years ago, terrified and young and watching his partners die. Crane doesn't head for the front door like someone conducting official business. Instead, he walks around to the kitchen entrance, moving with the familiarity of someone who's been here before. The realization hits me like cold water. He knows about the tunnel. He's counting on us using it, counting on us being exactly where we are. "He's afraid, too," Olivia whispers, her voice barely audible over the storm. She's still clutching the locket, but now her knuckles are white with the effort. "He's more afraid than we are." Crane stops at the kitchen door and doesn't bother with subtlety. He pulls out a set of lockpicks, not the tools of a federal judge, but muscle memory from a life he thought he'd buried. The sight of him working the lock with practiced efficiency tells me everything I need to know about how deep his secrets run. When he disappears inside the house, I make a decision that probably qualifies as either brave or stupid. "Wait here," I tell Sarah, checking the cylinder of my .38. "If I'm not back in 10 minutes, take Olivia and run." The sprint from the barn to the house leaves me soaked and shivering, but the adrenaline keeps me warm. I circle around to the front porch, using the storm as cover, and let myself in through the door that's been compromised so many times tonight it might as well have a revolving entrance. Crane is standing in the kitchen, staring at the pantry where the tunnel entrance lies hidden. He's aged a decade since I saw him this morning, his silver hair plastered to his skull and his hands trembling with something that isn't cold. When he hears my footsteps, he turns with the resignation of a man who's run out of moves. "Detective Marshall," he says, and his voice carries the weight of every sleepless night for the past 40 years. "I wondered when you'd show up." I keep the .38 trained on him, but something in his posture tells me he's not here to fight. "Your Honor," I say, letting the formality hang between us like a noose. "Bit late for a house call, isn't it?" His laugh is a broken sound, sharp around the edges. "Late for a lot of things?" He reaches into his jacket, moving slowly so I don't get nervous, and pulls out an old photograph. 3 young men in 1960s clothing, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera with the confidence of people who think they'll live forever. "Jimmy Castellano," he says, pointing to the face on the left. "Danny Kowalski," the middle figure. "And Tommy Crane." His finger finds the third man, himself, 19 years old and already showing the sharp intelligence that would carry him to a judge's bench. The best bank robbery crew Boston never caught. I keep the gun steady, but my attention is locked on his words. Until 1964. Until we tried to hit the First National on a Tuesday morning and everything went sideways. Crane's eyes are distant, seeing events that happened before I was born. Security guard we thought would be a pushover turned out to be an ex-Marine. Jimmy took a bullet in the leg, Danny caught one in the shoulder. We had to run with nothing but small bills and the certainty that half the state would be looking for us by evening. The storm rattles the windows, and somewhere in the distance I can hear the tactical teams still searching for us in the wrong places. Crane doesn't seem to notice. He's lost in 1964, reliving the worst day of his life. "We knew about this place," he continues. "Abandoned for months, far enough from town that we could lay low until the heat died down. But Jimmy was losing blood fast, and Danny was getting delirious from fever. We needed medical attention we couldn't get." "So you killed them," I say, though I already know it's not that simple. Crane's face crumples. "I tried to save them. Drove into town looking for antibiotics, bandages, anything that might help. But when I came back," he trails off, staring at the basement door. "They were already dead. Both of them. Jimmy had bled out and Danny had just stopped breathing." The pieces fall into place with a sound like dominoes toppling. "But you couldn't report it." "Couldn't call for help." "I was 19 years old with a record that went back to middle school," Crane says. "If the cops found me with 2 dead bodies and a bag of stolen money, my life was over. So I did what any terrified kid would do." His voice drops to a whisper. "I buried them in the basement and invented a story about helping the police catch dangerous criminals." I think about the newspaper clipping I found, the one that called him a hero, and it worked. For 40 years it worked perfectly. Crane's shoulders sag under the weight of decades. I used the reward money to pay for law school, built a career on the foundation of that lie. Became the kind of man who sends other people to prison for the crimes I committed as a boy. Until Helix Pharmaceuticals came knocking, I say. His eyes widen with surprise, then narrow with understanding. They knew. Somehow they knew everything. About the robbery, about Jimmy and Danny, about the story I told the police. They said it didn't matter, that my secret was safe as long as I helped them with a small problem. The experimental drug trial. Crane nods, his face gray with shame. They needed a respected local figure to vouch for their research, someone who could convince families to volunteer their children for testing. In exchange, they'd keep my past buried. He meets my eyes. "I thought it was medical research. I thought I was helping sick kids get better." The truth hangs between us like a loaded gun. 2 men shaped by old crimes, standing in a kitchen where secrets have been bleeding through the walls for decades. I understand now why Olivia heard screaming, not from the dead men in the basement, but from the living man who's been carrying their deaths like a cancer in his chest. Outside, the storm is beginning to ease, and I can hear the sound of engines getting closer. Time is running out for all of us. "What are you going to do?" Crane asks, and there's genuine curiosity in his voice, as if my answer might determine whether he can finally find peace. I think about justice and revenge, about the difference between law and right, about a 9-year-old girl who can touch the past and see the truth that adults spend lifetimes trying to hide. That depends, I say, on what you're willing to do to make this right. The change in Crane happens like a light switch thrown in reverse. One moment he's a broken old man confessing 40 years of guilt. The next, he's reaching inside his jacket with the fluid motion of muscle memory that never quite dies. The pistol he produces is small and well-maintained, the kind of backup weapon a paranoid judge might carry to sentencing hearings where the defendant's family has made threats. "I'm sorry," he says, and the words carry the weight of genuine regret. "But I can't let you walk away from this." Behind me, the kitchen door creaks open. Sarah steps through first, her face pale with worry, followed by Olivia clutching her backpack like a shield. They must have seen me enter the house and decided waiting in the barn was more dangerous than whatever they might find inside. Crane's eyes flick to them and something dies in his expression. "The child especially," he whispers. "She's seen too much. She knows too much." I keep my .38 trained on him, but we're close enough that either of us could be dead before the other completes his draw. "Put it down, Your Honor. This doesn't have to end with more bodies." "It ended the day that pharmaceutical company walked into my office," Crane says. His gun hand is steady despite his age, 40 years of courtroom composure serving him well even now. The day I realized they weren't just asking for a favor, they were buying a slave. The sound of engines grows louder outside, and through the kitchen window I can see tactical lights sweeping the property with systematic precision. Helix's cleanup crew is closing in, and we're trapped between corporate assassins and a desperate old man with nothing left to lose. Crane sees them too, and his face twists with bitter irony. "They told me if I eliminated the witnesses, they'd consider my debt paid. 40 years of servitude, and all I had to do was clean up one last mess." His laugh is broken glass. "But I think they're planning to clean up the cleanup crew, too." That's when Sarah makes her choice. She sees Crane's finger tighten on the trigger, sees the way his barrel is starting to track toward Olivia, and she moves with the protective instinct that turns mothers into shields. Her dive carries her between Crane and her daughter just as his shot goes wide, the bullet punching through the cabinet door behind where Olivia was standing. I use the moment of chaos to launch myself at Crane, driving my shoulder into his sternum and sending both of us crashing into the kitchen table. The old man is stronger than he looks, and 40 years of guilt has given him a desperate strength that's hard to counter. We roll across the floor, both of us fighting for control of his pistol, while my .38 skitters away into the corner. The kitchen door explodes inward just as Crane gets his gun hand free. 3 men in tactical gear pour through the opening, their own weapons trained on the tangled mass of our bodies. Behind them I can see more figures moving through the hallway, the professional efficiency of a team that's done this before. "Secure all witnesses," the lead man barks, his voice distorted by the communications equipment built into his helmet. "Minimal collateral damage." Crane laughs, a sound like breaking bones. "Collateral damage," he repeats. "That's all any of us ever were." I roll away from him and come up with my hands visible, hoping the gesture will buy us a few seconds. "You don't want to do this," I tell the tactical leader. "Not here, not with this many loose ends." "Detective Marshall," the man says, and his knowledge of my name chills me more than the gun pointed at my chest. "You're going to come with us quietly. And so is the child." But I've been thinking about this moment since we left the hospital, running scenarios in my head during every quiet minute. "That's going to be a problem," I say, reaching slowly for my phone. "Oh, see, I've got insurance." The tactical leader's helmet tilts, a mechanical gesture that somehow conveys skepticism. "Olivia's medical records," I continue, keeping my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "Her drawings, photos of the crime scene. All of it uploaded to a dead man's switch that sends copies to every major newsroom in the state if I don't check in every 6 hours. It's a complete bluff, but it's the kind of bluff that works because it's exactly what a paranoid cop would do. The lead man speaks quietly into his throat microphone, probably checking with someone higher up the food chain. That hesitation is all we need. Crane uses the distraction to grab his pistol and put a bullet through the tactical leader's faceplate, dropping him in a spray of blood and shattered polymer. The other two men swing their weapons toward him, giving Sarah the opening she needs to grab Olivia and bolt for the pantry. I follow them into the tunnel opening, my ears ringing from gunfire in the enclosed space, while behind us Crane empties his magazine into the tactical team with the methodical precision of a man who's finally found his purpose. His last words echo down the tunnel after us. 40 years! 40 goddamn years! The crawl through the tunnel is a nightmare of panic and tight spaces, with Sarah sobbing and Olivia making small wounded sounds that cut through me like knife blades. When we emerge in the barn, the cold hits us like a physical blow, but it's nothing compared to the ice in Olivia's eyes. She collapses the moment we're out of the tunnel, her small body convulsing as if she's having a seizure. But her eyes are open, staring at something none of us can see. And when she speaks, it's in a voice that doesn't belong to a 9-year-old child. "It never stops screaming," she sobs, her hands pressed to her ears. All of them, all the voices, all the pain and fear and secrets they carry. Her face is streaked with tears that seem too large for her small features. The walls in every house, the ground under every building, all of it soaked with things people did and things they wish they could undo. Sarah kneels beside her daughter, trying to offer comfort that can't possibly reach deep enough. "It's okay, baby. It's over now." But Olivia shakes her head with violent denial. "It's not over. It's never over. The gift doesn't turn off, Mom. It just gets louder and louder until you can't hear anything else." She looks at me with eyes that have seen too much truth. "That's what happened to the other children. They didn't disappear. They just stopped being able to hear anything but the screaming. I understand now why Helix wants their test subjects back, why they're willing to stage roadblocks and gun down federal judges to keep their secrets buried. They didn't just create psychic children, they created living repositories of humanity's darkest secrets, walking archives of every crime and trauma that left an echo in the world. Outside, the sound of engines grows distant as the surviving tactical team retreats, probably to regroup and report the night's failures to their corporate masters. But they'll be back, and next time they won't hesitate to put bullets in anyone who knows too much. I help Sarah lift Olivia, the girl's small body trembling with psychic overload, and we disappear into the storm-lashed darkness between the trees. Behind us, the Grant house stands silent and empty, keeping its secrets for whatever comes next. The dawn comes like forgiveness, gray and uncertain, but persistent enough to burn away the worst of the night's shadows. By the time the state police find Judge Thomas Crane's body, the sleet has stopped, and the world looks washed clean, as if the storm carried away 40 years of accumulated sin along with the accumulated snow. They find him in his courthouse parking space, slumped over the steering wheel of his sedan with his wrists handcuffed to the leather-wrapped rim. The confession is written in his own blood on pages torn from a court summons, the words growing smaller and more frantic as his strength failed. But the story is complete. The 1964 robbery, the deaths of Jimmy Castellano and Danny Kowalski, the decades of lies that followed, and the pharmaceutical company that turned his guilt into chains. The local news breaks the story by noon, and by evening the national networks have picked it up. Federal judge found dead. Confession to decades-old murders, allegations of corporate conspiracy involving experimental drugs on children. It's the kind of scandal that makes careers for investigative journalists and ends them for everyone else involved. I watch the coverage from a motel room 50 miles outside the state line, Sarah and Olivia curled together on one of the twin beds, while I nurse a cup of coffee that tastes like burned hope. The reporter on TV is young and earnest, explaining to the camera how Judge Crane's confession has raised serious questions about the ethics of pharmaceutical research and the vulnerability of rural communities to corporate exploitation. What she doesn't mention, what she can't know, is that 3 black SUVs departed Westbridge before dawn, carrying whatever remained of Helix's tactical operation back to wherever corporate cleanup teams go to write their after-action reports. They left behind no bodies, no evidence, no trace of their presence except for some scuffed tire tracks in the Grant House driveway and the memory of men who moved like ghosts through the storm. But they also left behind a message, delivered through channels that don't appear on any corporate org chart. Word reaches me through Donnelly, who calls from a payphone and speaks in the careful code of someone who knows his regular phone is compromised. "The pharmaceutical company you were asking about," he says. "Their research division has been permanently suspended. Budget cuts, they're calling it. All test subjects have been released from monitoring effective immediately." It's not justice, but it's something. The other children, wherever they are, whatever's been done to them, will have a chance to disappear before the next cleanup team gets its marching orders. Maybe some of them will find their way back to normal lives. Maybe some of them will learn to live with the voices in their heads. Maybe some of them will find families willing to run with them into whatever comes next. The safe house is a cabin in Vermont, rented under a name that exists only in the kind of documentation you can buy if you know the right people and have the right cash. Sarah and I worked out the arrangements during the drive north, both of us understanding that our old lives ended the moment Olivia touched that locket and saw the truth behind a 40-year-old lie. It's a good place for hiding. Isolated, off the grid, surrounded by the kind of wilderness where 3 people can disappear for months without anyone asking questions. Sarah seems smaller here, younger, like the weight of her mother's house and her failed marriage, and her daughter's impossible gift has finally lifted from her shoulders. Olivia explores the cabin with cautious curiosity, testing the walls with her fingertips, but finding nothing more than old wood and the accumulated peace of a place where nothing terrible has ever happened. On our second day here, she approaches me while I'm sitting on the porch, watching the sun set through pine trees that look like they've been growing since the world was young. "Thank you," she says, settling beside me on the wooden steps. "For helping us." I nod, not trusting my voice. In the distance, a loon calls across the lake, its voice lonely and wild and somehow comforting. "Can I show you something?" Olivia asks, extending her small hand palm up between us. "Something good this time?" I stare at her hand for a long moment, remembering every horror she's seen, every secret she's been forced to carry. Then I place my palm against hers, skin to skin, and wait for whatever truth she's found in the psychic wreckage of my life. The change is immediate but gentle, like slipping into warm water. I feel her gift reaching into my past, sorting through decades of memories like a librarian looking for one specific book. When she finds what she's looking for, the world shifts around us, and suddenly I'm not on a porch in Vermont anymore. I'm in a hospital room in Boston 15 years ago, standing beside a bed where my daughter lies, connected to machines that beep and hiss with mechanical breathing. Emily is 19, beautiful, even with the tubes and wires, her dark hair spread across the pillow like a prayer. The accident was my fault. The drunk driver I chased through a school zone, the collision that happened because I was too focused on the pursuit to see the bigger picture. But in Olivia's vision, I hear something I missed the first time. Emily's voice, whispered so softly I thought it was just the ventilator cycling. "It's okay, Dad. I know you were trying to help. I forgive you." The words I thought I'd never hear, the absolution I've been carrying the weight of needing for 15 years. Emily knew I was there. She knew I was sorry. And in those final moments before the machine stopped, she found the strength to tell me what I needed to hear. When Olivia releases my hand, the tears are already flowing. Not the bitter tears of guilt I've been shedding for a decade and a half, but something cleaner. Something that tastes like gratitude instead of regret. "She loved you," Olivia says simply. "Even at the end. Maybe especially at the end." I wrap my arms around this strange, gifted child who's given me back my daughter's voice, and for the first time since that terrible night in Boston, I feel like I might be able to forgive myself. Sarah watches us from the kitchen window, her own tears reflecting the sunset, and I understand that we're not just hiding here. We're healing. All three of us, in our own ways, learning to live with gifts and burdens that the world isn't ready to understand. Tomorrow, we'll start planning what comes next, how to build new lives from the wreckage of our old ones. But tonight, we're just a family sitting on a porch in Vermont, watching the stars come out over a lake that holds no secrets except the quiet ones that make life worth living. The drive home unfolds under a sunrise the color of old paper, pale and fragile but persistent enough to burn through the cloud cover that's been choking New England for a week. I take the back roads, the ones that meander through small towns where the worst crime is usually someone's dog getting loose or teenagers drinking beer behind the grocery store. Normal places where children don't develop psychic abilities from experimental drugs and judges don't carry 40-year-old guilt like tumors in their chests. Olivia's drawing sits on the passenger seat beside me, weighted down by my coffee cup so the morning breeze through the cracked window won't carry it away. The paper is still damp from our escape through the tunnel, and the crayon has smudged slightly, but the terrified young face is still recognizable. Thomas Crane at 19, watching his partners die, making the choice that would define the rest of his life. I should probably destroy it. Burn it in some anonymous rest stop and let the smoke carry away the last physical evidence of a case that officially never happened. But something stops me. The same instinct that made me keep evidence files long after the statute of limitations expired. The cops need to preserve truth, even when it's inconvenient. Maybe especially when it's inconvenient. The radio plays soft jazz, the kind of music that makes you think about roads not taken and choices that can't be unmade. I pass through Millbrook, then Ashford, small communities that look like postcards from an America that probably never existed, but that we all pretend to remember. White churches and general stores and the kind of main streets where people still wave at strangers, where the biggest pharmaceutical company is probably the family-owned drugstore that's been filling prescriptions since the Eisenhower administration. I think about the other children from Helix's trial, the ones Olivia could feel getting quieter in the dark. Some of them are probably safe now, hidden away in cabins or farmhouses or suburban homes where loving parents are learning to live with children who can touch the past and see things that were meant to stay buried. Some of them might even be healing, their gifts fading back to normal childhood nightmares and imaginary friends. But some of them are probably gone, lost to corporate cleanup teams, or their own inability to process the weight of all that unwanted truth. Olivia was lucky. She had a mother willing to run, a detective stupid enough to believe in impossible things, and a grandmother who left sugar cubes on windowsills to keep the old ones at bay. Not every gifted child gets that kind of protection. The thought sits heavy in my chest, but it's different from the guilt I've been carrying about Emily. This is the weight of knowledge, not responsibility. I couldn't have saved all of them, couldn't have fought a corporation with federal connections and unlimited resources. But I saved the ones I could reach, the ones who fell into my orbit during a week when the past refused to stay buried. That has to be enough. In this line of work, it always has to be enough. My phone buzzes with a text from Sarah. Olivia wants to know if you'll visit for Christmas. Says the cabin doesn't have any screaming walls, just the good kind of quiet. I smile despite myself, imagining the three of us decorating a tree while snow falls outside and the lake freezes into a mirror that reflects nothing but sky. It's not the life any of us planned, but it's the life we've earned through surviving the week when all our secrets came home to roost. The exit for Westbridge appears on my right, and I slow down to consider it. I could drive past the Grant house, see if anyone's bothered to fix the broken windows or repair the damage from Helix's search. I could stop by the courthouse and file my resignation in person, look Captain Morrison in the eye while I explain that some cases teach you when it's time to walk away. But something tells me Westbridge has had enough of my attention for one lifetime. The town will heal in its own way, the way small communities always do, by forgetting the parts that hurt too much to remember and holding tight to the stories that make them feel safe. In a few years, the Grant house will probably be renovated and sold to some young family who's never heard of psychometric children or pharmaceutical conspiracies. The basement will become a playroom or a home office, and the walls will learn to hold new secrets, better secrets, the kind that come from birthday parties and Christmas mornings and all the small miracles that make up normal life. I drive past the exit and keep heading west, toward the apartment I've been renting for 5 years without ever really making it home. There's a bottle of good bourbon waiting on my kitchen counter, the expensive stuff I've been saving for some undefined future celebration. Tonight seems like as good a time as any to crack it open. Some mysteries stay with you forever, etched into your bones like old fractures that ache when the weather changes. The Grant House case will be one of those, I know, the kind of story I'll never be able to tell at retirement parties or cop bar reunions. But for the first time in 15 years, I'm carrying more than just the weight of unsolved cases and unavenged dead. I'm carrying hope. The sun climbs higher, burning away the last of the clouds, and the road ahead looks like it goes on forever. Behind me, in a cabin beside a quiet lake, a little girl with impossible gifts is learning to live with the voices in her head. Her mother is learning that running away sometimes means running toward something better, and somewhere in the warm spaces between them the screaming has finally stopped. I roll down the windows and let the morning air fill the car with the smell of pine trees and possibility, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm not afraid of what I might find around the next corner. Some scars never fade, but some of them learn to sing instead of scream.